Often when I lead a Bible study, I like to ask two questions of those participating. I like to ask, what do you notice and what makes you wonder? In the text, what do you notice and what makes you wonder? And I ask these questions because the Bible seems to always have something new to show to us and to speak to us. And in this familiar gospel today, I'll ask you all those same questions. If you'll take a moment, play along, and turn in your bulletin again to the gospel, John 20, 19 to 31. Take a moment and look. What do you notice? And what makes you wonder? Well, I notice many unique aspects in this gospel text. I notice what day it was. It was the day that Jesus was resurrected. I notice, though, that his disciples didn't yet know this. They believed he was still dead and lying in a tomb. I notice that fear had driven them into hiding. I notice that Jesus is able to appear among his disciples somehow, even though the doors had been locked. I notice Jesus offering them peace, though they had all either betrayed him or abandoned him. And I notice that after saying to them, "Peace be with you," he showed them his hands and his side. Jesus didn't condemn them or shame them, but he did show them his scars. Now, it may seem like a small, insignificant detail, but I don't think it is. This is Jesus coming to his doubt-filled, confused, terrified disciples. These disciples who were in hiding because they didn't want to get persecuted. They didn't want to die like their Messiah had. And I think at this point, they don't even know what they believe. And then I see Jesus coming to them and saying to them, in essence, "As I told you, I'm alive again. It is me, the same one who hung on that cross and died. Look at my wounds. See my scars. It's me. I'm back. I'm with you." And this is what I believe is so significant. Jesus, back from the dead, appearing to his disciples not as a fully healed man, not as some kind of divine angelic being. He came among them, and while we don't know exactly what he looked like, we know that he had the holes and the wounds of a man who had been beaten and nailed to a cross. What's significant is this: Jesus' wounds remained a part of him. He was alive after having died, and yet the scars of death remained upon his human body. And I imagine that he was still bruised and bloodied. And all of that, the wounds, the holes, the bruises, the dry blood, it could have been a painful reminder to the disciples. It could have been a painful reminder of how they had abandoned him in his most desperate time of need. But those wounds weren't meant to be a painful reminder to them of how they had failed Jesus. No, the wounds were there to show them how much love Jesus had for them, the lengths that he was willing to go to for all of humanity. The wounds were there to allow doubt to become faith. We, all of us, like Jesus, have deep, deep wounds. We have deep pain and scars, and some of them are too difficult to speak about aloud. I know that. And I believe that God knows all the wounds that we have, and I believe that God cares deeply about them. I believe that those remaining wounds upon Jesus' body show that specific solidarity that he had with us. It's as if I think Jesus is saying to his disciples, you have doubts, you have fear and anxiety, you've done things that you feel guilty about, you let me down, you abandoned me, you don't know what you believe now, and you have wounds. I know. And look at my hands. I have them too. Now, we might not think that an open wound could be a symbol of healing, kind of an ironic thought that an open wounds could be somehow a way to find healing. But I believe that they can. Because in this faith that we have, open wounds give life. Our wounds connect us to Jesus' wounds, and acknowledging our own wounds and Jesus's allows us to leave past hurts and mistakes behind, and then to heal, and then to rise to life again. It's okay to be wounded. It's okay to admit the hurt and the wounds that we have, because Jesus bore all of them too. Wounds of death and wounds of healing, the ironic ways of God that allow wounds that would ultimately take away Jesus' life to then give life back to each of us. It's tempting, I think, in life to hide like Jesus' disciples did. To hide out of fear, out of believing that we failed God too much, out of some belief that maybe God can't use us or do anything with us because we can't fully be faithful all the time. It's tempting to believe that our wounds always have to define us. But Jesus' wounds, his faith in his disciples, his breathing the Spirit upon them, it allowed those men to leave the past behind. It allowed them to go simply from being people who followed disciples to men who were now sent, apostles. They would be sent out into the world, though they were flawed, though they had doubt, though they didn't know fully what they believed anymore. He was offering them peace and commissioning them, sending them out to tell the world about a forgiving, accepting love that could do anything and that could heal anyone. And I'm not even going to talk about the disciple Thomas today, doubting Thomas, and his need to see and touch Jesus' wounds, because all of those disciples, just like all of us, they had difficulty when it comes to believing in the power of God to heal and to forgive them. They all had doubts. They all were in hiding. And we too. I think we all have doubts at times. We all have wounds, and that's why we have to stop and we notice that Jesus came to those intimidated disciples with peace and love and forgiveness, not with condemnation, not with any kind of shame or guilt. We notice and we wonder how God can use even us, flawed, broken people, wounded, doubting people. We notice and we wonder how God can use us and still have faith in us, even if we don't fully have faith in God. But Jesus, he asked Thomas that day, and he asks all of us to not doubt, but to take a step of faith, to believe in the power of God to heal, to believe in the power of his wounded hands and side, to believe that God can use even us. Jesus bleeds as you do. Jesus hurts like we do. And yet healing and resurrection can still come to us. Amen.